everyone. Excited to be here and be in front of you. Thank you, Bashir, for the quick introduction. So I'm Jess Montgomery. I am the Vice President of Analytics and Data Science with Codoxo. I get to do a lot of very fun, exciting things: data science, product development, innovation, strategy, a lot of things that I'm super passionate about in this space. I grew up in northern Minnesota, small rural community, dyslexic, speech impediment, so it's great to, it's really interesting to see how you can evolve and overcome a lot of that. Couldn't decide between going and becoming a nurse, law enforcement, or computer science. Little did I know that there was going to be this thing called payment integrity that was really going to allow me to blend all three of those together. You could get into the story about why I chose computer science, long story, but thank you, Mom. I was lucky enough to get a start at Ingenix, working with some people here in the room. They were a brand new company. United had just acquired Britton and Anderson and was really starting to insource new capabilities. Started as a business analyst with them, worked with them for several years. When I left, I was leading the payment integrity and fraud, waste, and abuse analytics for all of United and a large number of external customers. I've had the opportunity to work with a number of health plans, a couple of larger Blues plans, really helping establish payment integrity capabilities. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota, really leading the build out of an entirely new payment integrity organization, all of the back office capabilities. That's actually where I met Mushir. We were, I think, client number 2 for them. Came in, saw the amazing creativity, the innovation that they were bringing, their ability to be flexible and come up with new capabilities was amazing. And then moved over to Cambia, where I was really helping them build out an entirely new payment integrity team, pulling together their payment integrity review team, their clinical audit team, the reimbursement policy team, and forming a whole new payment integrity organization, and then helping them build out their shared savings capabilities. Fast forward, I'm now here with Codoxo, helping them drive innovation and new capabilities within the space. I thought I'd start out with some definitions. I'm sure we all have ideas and perspectives. We hear data science, we hear AI, we hear generative AI. I thought it would be good to start with some foundational understanding in regards to what they are. Data science is really the practice. It's the method, it's the science behind building these capabilities out. We often use it as sort of a catch-all term to encompass everything within that space. AI is a piece of data science. Artificial intelligence, AI, this is really the machine learning aspect of it, the beginning to leveraging computers, technology, other capabilities to really automate work, find things that are not as easily identifiable by people, things that are going to take us a large amount of time. And that's kind of the space that we've lived in for a long time, right? With data science, kind of the early stages of AI and machine learning. Fast forward over the last 20 years, and now we have generative AI, right? I mean, a lot of this started to come out within the last couple of years. I know that we've been working on some very fun, innovative capabilities using generative AI at Codoxo, but generative AI is really that way of taking large data sources, other files, beginning to train transformer models to be able to understand, reproduce, automate, generate new capabilities based on the data that you're putting into it. The capabilities, I think, within generative AI are going to be exponentially huge. We talk about cell phones, right, and kind of what that cell phone curve looked like. In the 70s, a lot of cell phones were starting to come out. You saw people rolling around in LA with their bag phones and their little convertibles with their top down, right? And it was something that only the special and the elite had, right? And then you kind of move into the 80s, they became a little bit more common. 90s, I don't know about you, but I was carrying my little Nokia, 8 series, 9 series, whatever it was, right? And then mid-2000s, and then of course the BlackBerry came on the scenes, but then mid-2000s, this thing that I'm sure a lot of us have as I kind of look around, came onto the scene, the iPhone, right? And that just revolutionized what we were seeing in the communication space. And then from there, if we look at year over year, I think, what was it, 2007 to where we are now, we're carrying miniature supercomputers in our pockets, right? So much in the way of what we can do. What generative AI is going to do for us is going to be even more significant, right? It's going to be what the iPhone did to the telecommunications space, but across every industry, right? Whether it's manufacturing, it's communications, it's healthcare, it's any form of research, right? It's going to more or less warp speed a lot of the work, and I think it's going to be, for those of you that are familiar with Moore's Law, it's going to be Moore's Law on steroids, to be totally honest with you. One of the other terms I didn't put on here is something called AGI, so Artificial General Intelligence. That's really when systems start to become capable of producing their own content, right? Where they become somewhat self-learning. We could argue whether or not we could consider that sentient, right? At what time do they become human, or do they become living? We don't have that now. Depending on who you follow, I would hypothesize that we'll start to see some of that kind of fold out towards the latter part of this decade, or maybe even the early part of the following decade. So it'll be really interesting, super exciting to see where all this is going to go and what the capabilities are going to bring. I don't know about you. When I was a kid, I was infatuated with all things technology, right? All things sci-fi. From a little kid with my cartoons, thank you Jetsons, to Star Trek, and really kind of everything in between. I love Star Wars, love Star Trek. We can debate Trekkie versus probably more of a Trekkie if we're being honest, but still waiting for transporters. But it's interesting, right? I mean, you kind of, you look at these and we're having interactive face-to-face conversations via technology. We are, I'm looking kind of around the room, we're having conversations on our watches, right? Wild and crazy virtual visits. Who thought that was going to be real world? And then to be able to have long distance communications wirelessly, I mean, how futuristic, right? I mean, then of course there are the things like flying cars and whatever else, and but it's just interesting to see what we thought was fantasy, what we thought was fiction. Fast forward to what's reality, right? We have, I don't know about you, but I probably spend a large portion of my days interacting with people face to face on my computer, on my phone, right? I see them, it's like being in the room, but we're not necessarily in the room. It's great to see how quickly we're able to connect. I wear a smartwatch. I think probably a lot of you, if we held up our wrists, are probably all wearing smartwatches. We are making phone calls, we're sending text messages, we're doing voice, it can tell you exactly where I am. I mean, it's amazing to see where this has gone. I don't know about you, but the virtual visit is probably how I have most of my doctor's appointments these days, right? Especially if you're doing any traveling or whatever else. You log in, you make your appointments, your nurse practitioner, your physician is right there on the screen in front of you. It could be on your phone, could be on your computer. We have our cell phones. I mean, long distance wireless communication anywhere in the globe, right? I mean, you just pull it out of your pocket and you make it happen. Flying cars, we're not quite there yet. I think we could argue where we are at with autonomous vehicles, right? I mean, if you trust if you trust what's on the market, but it's continued to evolve, right? And it's amazing to see how AI and technology are coming together to make what was fantasy a reality. I recently had the opportunity to do an interview with Authority Magazine. They wanted to know my perspective on the future of artificial intelligence in healthcare. Super honored to be able to do that. I don't know how they came up with my name, but amazing opportunity. One of the things that they wanted to know is sort of a life lesson quote or mantra or something that I use to guide my day to day. Much like those slides that I just walked you through, so many people will tell you things are impossible. We're not capable of doing it, right? It's just something that we can't do. I love it when people tell me that things are impossible and trying to find ways to make that happen. As we look at what we're able to do with AI, generative AI, and even in the future with AGI, we're going to continue to make what was impossible possible, right? I mean, fundamentally, there's things that are still physically impossible, but that doesn't mean someday that they are going to be impossible, right? And so, as this moves forward, we have the capabilities to make what was impossible possible. This is kind of a little bit of an old slide with a little bit of an update if you're at all familiar with analytic maturity and what does that mean, what does that look like. But this is really, as we progress through that analytic maturity state, being able to go from what happened to really predicting more about what will happen. As we're able to do that, the competitive advantage, of course, increases, and I'm probably, for some of you, teaching you things that you already know, but moving from raw data to cleansed data to being able to have standard reports, being able to at least see things and monitor things, being able to do your own ad hoc analysis, and then really moving into kind of where we were, right? Some of the advanced capabilities of machine learning capabilities, what we were able to do with data science, that optimized state, being able to do prediction, starting to do certain levels of automation. But now as we look at the application of generative AI and what that's able to do, and I probably should have made this almost spike up, to be totally honest with you, because as we look at what we're going to be able to do from an optimization perspective with generative AI, the capabilities are exponential, right? Whether it's healthcare, specifically within payment integrity, or really any other industry globally. Why is it important to healthcare? And I'm going to be a little bit specific here because I'm going to focus more on the healthcare payer side. More broadly, of course, there's all the research, there's disease, there's development of medications, new pharmaceuticals, right? But within our space, it's really the accuracy and efficiency, right? Being able to automate a lot of the tasks that we do every single day. What happens in the claims processing spectrum, being able to be on top of that, understand medical coding, automation. There is the identification of improper payments, right? So how are we able to leverage capabilities to really detect as early as possible claim payment inaccuracies, right? New aberrancies, new things that are popping up, things that we weren't necessarily aware of before. And I'm sure that we can all argue provider satisfaction, right? I mean, what provider necessarily loves what we do in this room? Quick show of hands, anyone thinks the providers love what we're doing from a payment integrity perspective? The benefit here is the fact that things will be consistent. As this moves forward, it's going to be more timely. Hopefully shifting from, and a lot of us probably already have shifted from that whole pay and chase to being able to do things in a more real-time fashion, right? Making sure that it's paid and processed correctly the first time. And as that happens, as we're able to be more targeted in what we're going to those providers with, we're able to really improve that satisfaction, or at least reduce some of the abrasion. At the same time, and again, this is probably a little bit debatable, there's the whole transparency and accountability piece, but really adding an additional level of transparency and more information. I can talk to you a little bit more about what we're doing with generative AI in that space. There's just so much in the way of opportunity. As we look at moving towards a zero-touch payment integrity space, and I realize that for a lot of us, we could argue that zero-touch seems like a fantasy or something that's not capable, but if you reflect back to the earlier slides, I mean, what was fantasy, what was fiction is continuing to become reality, right? And we're not necessarily there yet today, but we are moving in that direction. We are able to analyze massive amounts of data and very quickly find anomalies, new potential aberrancies, things that we didn't even know existed. If I sat down and had to go through all the claims data by hand, maybe someday eventually I would find it, but we're able to take that and make it happen in minutes or seconds instead of days, months, or years. We are monitoring claims in real time. There are a lot of really cool capabilities that we're now able to leverage. And I look to my partners, we've got Lyric in the room, right? And with what they've been doing for kind of that real-time claim payment space, as I'm sure what they're going to be able to do with this is going to be exponentially huge within that primary claims editing space, and I think across the broader payment integrity space as well, being able to apply these capabilities. Another really interesting thing too, whether it's there or whether it's really kind of in the automation space, we've started to leverage generative AI to be able to summarize a lot of complex materials very quickly, right? Whether it's provider contracts, it's administrative guides, it's medical policies, it's reimbursement policies, to very quickly be able to take that and generate it into an easily digestible summary, right? So that whoever's doing the review can fundamentally understand what it means, actually generate the code sets that go along with it, and we're even able to use that to actually generate the logic itself for the rules, the identification, the models, and continue to use that to drive innovation in that space. So I mean, as we look at how we're going to be able to apply this, I think it's going to be massive, right? And obviously, there's that whole automation piece, right? And I don't know if you in the room follow Codoxo, but one of the things that Mushir tasked me with when I joined Codoxo was to come up with capabilities that were going to address some of the biggest problems in healthcare. I had mentioned that I was with Cambia, a fairly large Blues plan, if you're familiar with them, Regions Blue Cross Blue Shield. I had the opportunity to really pull together 3 different teams to really form a new payment integrity organization. As I had mentioned growing up, I thought about nursing as a potential opportunity. And so their clinical team was probably one of my favorites. I would argue that they probably have one of the top clinical audit capabilities in the Blues, or at least they did. We did a lot of work to really refine the identification process that went into surfacing the claims for their clinical audits. I was blessed to have a team of 40 nurses and a handful of pharmacy techs that's what they did day in and day out. We were able to refine what they were reviewing, surface the right results of them, grew them from about 24 million to almost $100 million in savings in just that team in less than 18 months. The one thing that we struggled with was really the automation of the review process itself. There was not a whole lot that I could do within that space. One of my favorite examples that we had was a claim that came in. It probably should have been detected a lot earlier. We probably should have been using more generative AI or advanced AI capabilities. But I want to say it was right around $7 million. It was a multi-month stay. And it came in and we ended up picking it up, and if we were to have printed the medical records, it probably would have been multiple boxes, right? I mean, it would have just been insane. I had to have 3 nurses and a dedicated pharmacy tech for about 2 weeks to be able to go through and complete the entire review across all the different audits, the itemized bill review, and everything else, just to make sure that it was being paid correctly. I'm glad that we did, because there was a lot of anomalies, aberrancies, incorrect payments that were happening on that. But it was a significant investment to be able to do that. And so coming into Codoxo, what I started working with Mushir on was to be able to take generative AI and to be able to apply that to starting out the clinical audit process. So as we started looking at Claim Pilot and where we're going with that, it was to be able to automate that type of review, right? And it's there, it's continued to grow. And if you're okay with it, I'm just going to show you a quick demo of what that looks like. And this is actually Claim Pilot walking through an itemized bill review.
This is a demonstration of Codoxo's Claim Pilot. In the Claim Pilot overview dashboard, there are three main widgets. There is Audit by Status, Audit Inventory by Reviewer, which is a breakdown of audits that are assigned to each user, and a Claim Pilot Summary, which is a breakdown of each status and the audit count within each of these statuses, as well as their exposure. Selecting Ready for Review, you'll see that Claim Pilot is on the right. Claim Pilot is going to give you a summary of everything that has taken place since you last logged in. For example, it's informing you that there's 23 new claims that were identified for review. That's totaling $431,000. On the left-hand side is where those reviews are going to be organized. These pending reviews are going to be organized into categories. And if you select a category, you're going to get a description, some information, and a list of claims that are associated to this category. Claim Pilot will also give you a summary specific to this category, and it will give you suggestions on what you can do or ask Claim Pilot. I'm going to click on the first claim, and here you'll see some claim information, and you'll see an audit checklist. Now what Claim Pilot will do is it will request medical information or documents from providers so that users don't have to. The users can click on the checklist to see the scans and documents that the providers have uploaded. Now on the right, you'll see that Claim Pilot is also informing me that this claim is being audited in the upcoding audit category. I can click on this hyperlink, or I can select this category. Drop down to upcoding. Moving into upcoding category, you'll see that the lines are highlighted that are going to be reviewed specifically for upcoding. I'm going to go back to the itemized bill review. Here you can see the lines that are highlighted for itemized bill review. Claim Pilot's informing me that based on policy 13896, we found that lines to telemetry, infusion pump, respiratory, blood pack cells, blood platelets, and blood admin appear to be unbundled from Rev Code 120. I'm going to tell Claim Pilot that blood pack cells and blood platelets should not be included in this review. Now what Claim Pilot just did is that it removed blood platelets and blood pack cells from the review list. You can see that these two lines are now grayed out, and it's asking me if I want to remove blood platelets and blood pack cells from all outstanding and future audits. Selecting yes, what Claim Pilot will do is it will learn and apply this to all future claims that have this combination of room, board, and blood. Claim Pilot has given me an update to let me know that it's been removed from this review and it will be applied to 13 current audits as well as all future audits. I'm going to let Claim Pilot know that the remaining lines for the itemized bill review should not be paid and to be denied. Claim Pilot is going to inform me that the remaining lines totaling $12,000 will be sent for denial once upcoding review is complete. It'll ask me if I want to do the upcoding review right now. No, I'm going to pass on this for now. I'm going to close this claim, but please notify the review team to complete the upcoding claim. Audit by status.
So it's amazing to see where we've been able to...
This is a demonstration of Codoxo's Claim Pilot.
I'm sorry. It's amazing to see where we've been able to take this technology in what I think is a relatively short time frame, and that really is leveraging the new advancements within AI, within data science, the generative AI capability. And I was going to ask, but I didn't ask here, because I'm sure that we all have opinions on generative AI. What is generative AI? I was going to ask you, is generative AI an application that you can download in an app store? And I'm sure that most of us probably understand that it's not. It's a lot of models, a lot of capabilities, a lot of it built around a lot of large amounts of language data, whether it's Wikipedia or whether it's other medical reference material. But being able to bring all of that together and train it on your own data, your own additional content really does make this sort of capability powerful. And I think what we have in this room is the opportunity to really adopt and revolutionize what we're able to deliver within the payment integrity space across healthcare. Huge increases in efficiency, a lot of automation that is going to happen within this space, that can happen in this space beyond what's already happened. One of the questions that I receive on a regular basis, and I'm sure your teams too, if you're working in healthcare and you're looking at generative AI, is this going to replace my work? And I'm sure that we'll probably cover this in the panel later too. You know, and I think we can debate back and forth on kind of where that falls. A lot of us have different opinions. But when I look at it, the clinical reviewer, the pharmacy tech, the auditor, yes, they will be replaced, but they're going to be replaced by the clinician, the auditor, the reviewer, the pharmacy tech that's using generative AI. They're not going to be replaced by the AI itself, but by the users that are willing to adopt it, because it is going to advance and accelerate what they're actually able to accomplish, right? And so making them immensely more efficient, being able to take things that happen in weeks and move them down to days, hours, or potentially even faster. There's the improved accuracy, right? Leveraging capabilities, technology to really be able to identify those. You take out, to some extent, the human error, but then of course you introduce computer error, right? But making things much more consistent, ideally a lot more accurate. Obviously, as you're accelerating this, you're able to reduce costs, you're able to do a lot more in a much more efficient time frame. As I kind of look at what I was able to do here with my team, I mean, this could have, I could have removed a lot of thresholds, and the clinical audit team's capabilities probably could have been, 100 times more effective, right? If we would have been able to do significantly more, we likely would not have had to have the thresholds that we needed to have, literally just to manage the sheer volume. There is the better decision-making aspect of it too, which reminds me of an interesting conversation that I had with a number of other healthcare executives recently, right? And we were talking about the use of generative AI to be able to do this work. And it came up, well, we outsource this. What does it matter what the approach is, right? What does it matter if I'm getting the same result? Does it matter what their approach is? So I paused for a moment and I just said, okay, so you have a nail, let's put it in different terms, that you want to put in the wall, right? You've got a couple of different options, right? You can use a penny nail and drive it in nice and easily with minimal mess, or you can come in with a sledgehammer and you can get the nail in the wall that way too, right? But one of them is going to cause a significant amount of unrepairable damage, right? And so as you look at managing relationships, managing your network, your provider community, do you want to be causing that much unrepairable damage, or do you want to be selective, right? Do you want to do you want to be selective and more targeted about what you're engaging and make sure that it's really what you want from them and that you're doing it efficiently, or are you just going to go in with the sledgehammer approach? So I think it gave them a little bit of something interesting to think about. And it's one of those things that I think about too, right? I mean, we have the opportunity to be much more specific, much more targeted, significantly more efficient in the way that we do that. The other thing that I could have mentioned in that too is, well, if it's the same number of resources and you're literally doing the brute force methodology, how much more could you get out of that same capability if you could be that much more targeted in regards to what you're looking at? Obviously cautions, right? As we kind of jump in, we're jumping into an uncharted space. The unknown is something that I find super exciting, but it's also can be a bit nerve-wracking at the same time, right? And so one of the biggest cautions that we really have in this space is bias. I was talking to, I sit on a couple of children's healthcare nonprofit boards, and I was talking to one of the community outreach program leaders for Children's Hospital back in Minnesota. And she's super interested in being able to leverage AI. And as we were having that conversation, they deal with a large, diverse population. Even their staff is hugely diverse. And as we're talking about it, she was talking about the fear of this not being able to, or to have biases that don't take their communities into consideration. And as we were talking about that, I said, we have the opportunity now, right, this is early, to adopt it more broadly, to influence where it's going to go to help reduce those biases. You know, if we kind of talk about in, you know, education biases, right, and we look at the way things were done versus the way things could potentially be in the future as we move this forward. I have a lot of medical professional friends, doctors. Let's take what happens when you're, you know, kind of going through the dermatology-based textbooks, right? You open them up, you look at photos. We are training our dermatologists based on a bias right there. When they look at all the lesions, they're literally looking at lesions and other skin-related blemishes and concerns on Caucasian skin, right? How is that setting them up for success as they're managing other populations? And so we have the opportunity now, as we're building this out, to do what we can to help remove those biases. The other caution, as much as it adds explainability, is explainability, right? We all want to know what happens in that black box, right? And so in my past, I've had a lot of great operational partners, clinical partners, people that really want to understand, but they're so nervous about adopting a technology if they don't completely understand it. But I still go to them for my healthcare. I may not completely understand it. I do my best to become an educated consumer. So my recommendation here is to trust the partners that you work with and do what you can to really become an educated consumer of this capability, right? I'm not necessarily going to tell my primary care physician I don't trust her, right? I'm going to take the time to understand. We're going to have a good conversation, but at the end of the day, I'm going to trust her. So as you work with your partners, I strongly encourage you to select partners and team members that you're able to trust as you partner on this journey. And this is a debate that I have with every organization, every partner that I work with. My last caution, please do not let perfection be the enemy of good. This is going to continue to grow, continue to evolve. It's going to be iterative, and it's going to be iterative and happen very rapidly if you're willing to do it. So don't wait until you have perfect to be able to move this forward. If you can get to 80%, know that it's going to continue to grow and move forward. Thank you so much for letting me talk to you. I apologize, I'm not a comedian, right? And so I probably should have come up with some fun jokes for you, but a few of you know me, right? And of course, this is a huge change from, you know, that introverted, dyslexic child with a speech impediment, right? To be up here and be able to talk to you. But with that being said, what questions do you have? Patrick?
Just a quick question. So, I mean, generative AI, and I've always kind of put it in recently anyway, put it in a box of kind of being one of the next phases to predictive analytics. Now, it's a little broader, obviously, but it seems like kind of a almost natural kind of next step to not only just. Can you hear me now? No. Is it on? Oh, now it's on. So, not to repeat the question, but you know, generative AI and predictive analytics. Predictive analytics seem to be the, you know, precursor, so to speak, and just, you know, broader, more data, all that stuff. Can you comment on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was when we were kind of talking about, you know, that curve, that advancement, right? You go from optimization to that next level of optimization. What we had before with some of the predictive analytics, the machine learning capabilities that we had, that was the precursor. You know, that might have been, if we're talking about the mobile space, the communication space, that was the BlackBerry, right? I mean, and so now the iPhones hit, and you know, where are we going to be in another year, in 2 years, in 5 years? What is that going to look like at the end of this decade? Are we going to have artificial general intelligence, right? I mean, what we were doing from a machine learning perspective and the early space of prediction is now going to be warp speed, right? So that was the precursor to help us get to where we are today.
Okay, so just to add to Patrick, your question, I think, fundamentally, just kind of share here, machine learning is all about prediction. And so the question, okay, what's changed now with the generative AI? Generative AI is based on the large language models. So the fundamental change is the amount of data you have to make a certain prediction. And I think that's what we are seeing, the fascinating results coming out with the models that are trained on a much larger data set so that it can predict the output that you're trying to generate from these algorithms much more accurately and with a much larger surface area of the subject matter you can cover, which is actually astoundingly fascinating right now.
And actually we have Akshay from Lyric who will be presenting shortly, who's actually going to spend a lot of time actually talking about the large language models and the application of those in healthcare. Any other questions?
Do you have to worry about, in addition to bias, over reliance on the output if you have a system that might be hallucinating or giving you kind of going down rabbit holes?
Yes, and that's kind of where I got into it. This isn't going to replace the reviewer. It's not going to replace the clinician. You're still going to want somebody there to make sure that those results are what you expected, right? We are in the early phases, right? You're going to have those hallucinations. You're going to have those anomalies that are going to get surfaced. You're going to need to have someone say, yes, this looks correct. No, this doesn't. That's why we're not at a zero touch, right? I mean, you have to have that reviewer, that investigator, whoever it is, assess what's coming out of it, right? I mean, you need the expert, right? This is going to be a powerful tool in their tool chest, but this isn't going to replace them because they still have to be able to identify those. And as this technology continues to advance, hopefully those hallucinations and abnormalities slowly disappear into the sunset. Any other questions?
I don't know if it's a good question, but I'll ask it.
Any question is a good question. Yes, please.
So, is it a fair statement when you think about open AI versus AI that you have a little bit more control over what's going in, but yet the benefit of the open is so much broader? And so in that regard, when you think about bias, you're going to run into it, right? So, but is open AI more powerful and does it give you more broadened perspective? And sort of, are we going to talk about the difference between open and AI that you may want to assert control over?
If you are able to leverage it, obviously, there's pros and cons both ways, right? And so the more content, the more data that you're able to train it on, really the more knowledgeable it becomes, the more it understands. At the same time, within our space, there's also a certain level of security and risk and what information are you putting out there. And with what we do, we're not necessarily able to do that. So we have to leverage self-contained language models, right? So all of our work has to be within our own VPCs for each one of our clients. The last thing I would want is a data breach of 40 million members, information all of a sudden going off, right? And so we have to be very thoughtful about it. Now, if you're able to do things like what I talked about with, say, medical policies, reimbursement policies, contracts, and you're comfortable with that content being publicly available, the capabilities there could be very powerful if you're able to bring that in. But it's a caution, right? Because anything that you put in there, yes, you're getting the benefit of that crowdsourcing, but at the same time, there's risk in regards to what you're putting out there as well, because not only are you learning from what it knows, everyone else is learning from what you're putting into it as well.
And Sheila, just to add to, I think what's interesting is that the question you asked is the question every industry is asking. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing is rapid innovation in terms of, okay, how do you solve this problem? So for example, in the LLM space, there are foundational models who are good at prediction because they've taken the world's information and they can kind of create these answers to your questions. But we're also seeing innovation in terms of, okay, how do we basically add additional context that is very unique to me without necessarily making that data like go outside of our context. And there's a lot of innovation in terms of prompt engineering and stuff that allows you to do that today without exposing your data, if you choose to.
Yes.
So the innovation in terms of addressing these problems are across industries. And I think we're just going to see a lot of rapid innovation to be able to effectively adopt these new technologies over next year or so.
Yeah, and on that, I mean, I encourage my team to do both, right? And
That's
so
what I was thinking as well.
with the open aspect of it,
Right.
nothing proprietary, right? Nothing that we don't want to share, none of our code. But if you're stumped, if you're needing some additional direction, right? You want other perspectives on how to do things, you know, use it, take advantage of it, right? This is what's going to help us accelerate. I don't, you know, obviously be cautious about a copy and paste situation, right? Because you never know where it's coming from. You know, but oftentimes you can ask it the same question a number of different ways. You can get ideas that's going to help influence how you're going to continue to build things out. But at the same time, anything that's proprietary, anything that contains PHI, PII, we need to make sure that it is properly contained. Anything else? Any other questions? Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. Thank you for letting me be your opener this morning. And